Okay, so I guess I'm live now. Let me see. Oh my goodness. I want to see if I can take off the blurry screen. Share screen. Edit. Let me see. Cancel. Okay. Well, I guess I'm live now. It's been a while since I've read the chapter. I had things to do on Friday as well as Saturday. I went to a temple, but I'm back. And this is chapter 7 of The Man Who Spoke Snakish by Andros Kibrak. So I hope you enjoyed this chapter, okay? Here it is, chapter 7. We went in search of our fortune with the ring a few more times, but it was no use. The frog of the north could not be found. Each time our journey ended with us, at some point, not wanting to go any further, just stopping to eat blueberries. Finally, I came to the conclusion that the ring I received as a gift was not the right ring, or if it was, its use required a lot of effort than the sort of knowledge I didn't have. I lost interest in the ring, stuffed it back into its leather pouch, and gone in with other things. In my search for the frog of the north, I had often come upon the primate's hut. Naturally, I already knew them, because quite a few of us humans had remained in the forest, and Peter and Rock were actually human, though hairier than any of us. That was plain to see, since they didn't wear animal skins but walked around stark naked. They claimed that was their ancient custom, and that the decline of our people hadn't started with moving to the village or eating bread, but with putting on alien creature skins and adopting iron tools stolen from ships. There wasn't a speck of metal in their home, just hand axes made of stone. These were clumsy and almost shapeless, but Pierre and Rock assured us they sat comfortably in the hand and were healthy to use. It's our own stone, not some foreign iron, they said. When you take a stone like this in your hand, it gives you strength, messages your palms, and calms your nerves. In the olden days, with these stone axes, you did all the work. You were in a good mood and nobody got upset. Unlike Tambet, who also held sacred the ways of his ancestors and tried steadfastly to walk under their well-worn paths, Pierre and Rock were very mild. They didn't demand anything of anyone. They didn't want other people to wear their bottoms. Also, they never quarreled when they saw someone with a knife in their belt or a brooch on their jacket. If anyone had visited Tambet carrying a piece of bread, he might have set his wolves on that person as punishment for their impenitence, or at least cursed such a village lickspittle in the strongest terms. Peter and Rock, on the other hand, were spoke ill of anybody. They were friendly and hospitable and were not offended even when a visitor declined to eat the half-cooked hunk of meat they offered them. Well, you're not used to it, they would say kindly and laugh, their yellow fang glistening. You eat burnt food, doesn't matter how about we char this bit of meat till it's black for you. If you like it better that way, but it isn't healthy for you. The older people all ate half-cooked meat. It's good for digestion. You don't want any grubs. You don't want any grubs? I mean, what a waste. They used to be our people's favorite delicacy. Look, you take a grub, squeeze it empty onto your tongue. Mmm, delicious. They screwed up the eyes with pleasure and licked the grub mash off their lips, and yet display of ecstatic enjoyment didn't even convince me to taste this delicacy. Pierre and Rock didn't impose their preferences on me, though. They roasted my piece of meat blackish brown and wished me a good appetite longingly. But they let me eat in peace, while they combed through each other's hairs and picked out sprouts, needles, ants, and spiders. Even as a little boy, I had visited Pierre and Rock, now and then at first with Uncle Votole, later along with Parto. But while searching for the frog of the north, I got to know the primates better. A couple of times I even stayed the night with them, When an all-day hike through the forest had worn me out, and I didn't have the strength to go home in the evening, my mother knew that nothing could happen to me in the forest, because I already knew the snakish words well, and thanks to them I had nothing to fear. So she didn't worry if I didn't turn up at home for the night. Sometimes I slept at Aunt's snake nest, sometimes at Uncle Votele's place, but lately I had liked being at the primate's home, because there were lice there. Pierre and Rock were breeding them. Lice were their pets. The primates had no children, so they directed all their tenderness to care to lice. The lice lived in specially built cages. There were plenty of them and a whole range of sizes and shapes. There were quite ordinary gray lice, but also frog-sized ones, creatures that were specially bred and fed, which Pierre and Rock would sometimes take in their laps and stroke with their hairy hands. Most interesting of all these lice obeyed their masters. As I have said, insects don't generally understand snakish words. You can talk to an ant as much as you like, you will make no headway. A grasshopper disturbing your sleep with its chirping will crackle into sing, regardless of your having repeatedly yelled words of snakish at it that would have immediately struck another creature's thumb. It is impossible to make a spider or ladybird understand snakish. They are born idiots. Lice are also actually extremely obtuse creatures that would normally never obey your will. All the more remarkable then that Pierre and Rock had trained them up like clever fighting wolves. The lice did exactly what their masters and mistresses commanded. They would approach closer, lie down, get onto line, climb on each other's backs, roll around the ground like fat cubs. If you stretch out a hand to them, they would politely offer you a paw. All of these tricks they would do only at Pires and Rock's commands. If I tried to force them to do anything, they wouldn't move a muscle. I was very disappointed because I knew I spoke Snakish very well, no worse than the primates did. When I asked Pierre and Rock why they didn't comprehend my Snakish words, the primates laughed heartily. Ordinary snakish words aren't enough, they said. Listen carefully to the way they speak to them. We pronounce snakish in the old primate way. Long ago, when our ancestors were still living in caves and didn't know fire, they had power over insects. How else would they have survived the attacks of the guard flies and mosquitoes they could freely get at them? Without campfire smoke to scare them away, nowadays their ancient pronunciations has been forgotten. Even we can't speak it as they did tens of thousands of years ago. Of all the insects, we can only communicate with lice who have lived in the fur of animals for a long time and learned a few things from them. But it's beyond our powers even to scare away flies. It's sad that the old skills die out. It was a pity for me too, because I myself would have liked to keep the mosquitoes and gadflies away from me using snakish. They were disgusting creatures and they bit painfully. Now, I was trying to at least learn how to talk to the lice, but I was too hard a nut to crack. No matter how much I practiced, I just couldn't pronounce the snakish words like pire and rat. The difference was minute, but whether I liked it or not, my tongue slipped back into the old furrow. Pire and rock, I shouldn't bother myself, since it was impossible to learn primate pronunciation. It must be inborn, just as your forefathers had inborn fangs, they told me. You can sharpen your teeth as much as you like and rinse your mouth with any sort of infusion, but your teeth won't ever become poisonous. That's how it is with our language. You are not a primate. Our families are related, yes, but our ways parted long, long ago. You don't have a tail either. Indeed, I did not have a tail, unlike Peter and Rock, who had a soft little bulge growing out of their behinds. So I no longer tried talking to the lice and only wanted to know whether they were able to command only their own trained lice, or whether they could manage with an unfamiliar louse as well. We think we could, replied Pierre and Rock. Incidentally, they always spoke together, one saying one word, the other the next, so it was impossible to understand with which primate you were talking. In fact, it was impossible to imagine them apart. They were always together, moving around, side by side, and sitting, clinging to each other. I didn't know whether this was from their great love or whether hanging onto each other is simply a primate habit. Apart from Pierre and Rock, I didn't know any other primates. There probably weren't any. They weren't the last of their kind. In any case, I sought out a bear in the forest and asked him to give me a louse. The bird agreed happily. At the time, he was skulking around the home of a friend of my sister's, and I had a sneaking suspicion they had an assignation, because bears simply can't keep away from girls. This bear must have had some affair going on with my sister's friend, but that wasn't my business. As long as he didn't trouble my sister, I took some lice from the bear and left him sitting under a bush. A bear like that, on the prowl for a woman, may sit patiently in one place for several days, without eating or drinking, his head cocked, his paws meekly on his belly, and silly lovesick expression on his face. It makes a huge impression on a girl. Oh, what a sweet Teddy, they sigh tenderly, and the bear, having managed to create the desired impression, gets to his feet and shambles awkwardly over to his beloved. A gullible flower picked from a meadow in his teeth, and when he has continued to show his skill by weaving a dandelion bread and putting it on his own half-cooked head, then not a single woman can resist such an idyllic scene. I took the lice I'd received from the bear to Pierre and Rat, and after the primates had tenderly stroked them and let them scurry over their hairy fingers for a while, they commanded the lice to lie on their backs, and the creatures did so, waving their legs in the air. You see, they obey, said Pierre and Rat joyfully. Smart creatures. We'll let them in with the others. We got enough room. They could never have enough lice. They picked up every one they came across, and this time Pierre and Drag had another exciting task in hand. They had already bred frog-sized lice, but only a few, and wanted to breed lice that were the size of goats. The sturdier the lice were separated from the smaller ones, they were allowed to multiply, and from these the very youngest were selected. This did not take long, however, as the lice bred quickly and had plenty of offspring. A few months later, a goat-sized louse was born. I have to say that it was an impossibly hideous creature. With a little louse, the ugliness wasn't visible, and it was simply a little speck. But a big louse was the most unpleasant animal you can imagine. Pierre and Rock didn't think so. They were very pleased with their monster. In the olden days, all animals were much bigger than today, they said. They were incredibly bulky big creatures living in the world which have died out by now, or gone into hiding to sleep forever in darkness. A big animal has a big sleep. They may never walk again, and nobody will see the magnificent giants again. So it's nice to see the louse, which will do very well bustling about on the fur of some terribly huge and ancient creature. Look at it carefully. Before you see a fragment of a world of hundreds of thousands of years ago. I looked at that fragment and I didn't like it at all. I was very pleased to be living now, not hundreds of thousands of years before. I wasn't about to say that Pierre and Rod would, but for form's sake, I praised their laws and I even agreed to take the animal for a walk because the primates thought I needed exercise. Pierre and Rod themselves strayed away from their cave extremely rarely, since a little piece of permeable thicket remained just around their home, consisting of strange plants that had died out long ago elsewhere, that Peter and Rag ate, from which they harvested their grubs. Away from this little ancient ground, they didn't feel at home. I invited Ince and Portal along, attached the leash to the louse, and took it walking into the woods. The insect was indeed the size of a goat, but extremely stupid. Apparently, it couldn't understand that it was no longer the size of a seed and tried to fit through the narrowest slits, expressing an insane eagerness as it did so. It didn't care about our injunctions, but tried obstinately to press into some little holes that were tenths its size. As a result, the louse often got trapped, flailing its legs helplessly until we heaved it out with great effort. It was a terrible nuisance, and we decided to take it for a walk and in some clearer place where it couldn't climb anywhere. We went to the lakeshore, but the louse was even stupider than we had thought. It didn't perceive at all that was the surface of the water was not the same as the grass, rushed headlong straight to a lake and naturally fell in. Can this bastard swim? Squealed Partle, and I couldn't Ali answered, because I was no expert on lice, but after a few moments it became clear that it couldn't swim. It could swim after all, since it rose to the surface and floundered in the water. but again so stupidly that it steered away from us instead of keeping to the shore. "You won't be able to swim across the lake," said Ince. "I will get tired out and sink to the bottom. And as far as I'm concerned, I can't stay there. Such an animal, it can't stay there. Such an animal is no use to anyone." "I'm afraid I'll still have to go into the water and try to save it," I said. "Pierre and Ra would be angry if we didn't bring it back. It was entrusted to me, and I am responsible for it." I stripped naked and was ready to jump into the water when somebody sternly stopped me. It was Olga's the sage. "Where's your sense, boy?" he asked angrily. "Don't you know this lake is sacred? This is the home of the lake sprite to whom I always sacrifice 2 squirrels when the moon is young, so that he will stay in the lake and not let our homes drown in its currents. You must not swim here. It would anger the sprite terribly. First, he would pull you down under the water, and then he would flood the whole forest. Get dressed immediately and get out of here. Your friend, too. The lake sprite loves silence. He must not be disturbed." "I'm sorry for that, but I want to catch that beast," I said. Ulga scowled at the loud splashing on the lake, and his face became pale. "But that's the lake sprite himself," he muttered, falling to his knees as if at that moment his shinbone was broken in half. "The sacred lake sprite is showing himself to us. What could it mean?" He stared at the louse bobbing in the water, his eyes big with wonder. "Boys, you've offended him in some way," he thundered, raising his arm heavenward. "He came for you, and I must not let you go. The sprite has the right to a sacrifice." "That is a louse, not a sprite," said Ince scornfully. Others didn't believe in sprites, just as they didn't believe in blooming farms. They knew the forest inside out, and they knew what lives there and what does not. They did not stop people from going to the sacred grove and bringing sacrifices, although in their eyes it was completely senseless. Others never interfered in their others' beings' affairs as long as it didn't affect them directly. In their view, everyone has the right to live their lives just as foolishly as they like. Clearly, then, the sight of a snake did not exactly please the sage of the grove. He eyed Ince disdainfully and then looked again at the louses swimming in the water. "What are you talking about? What louse?" he said. "Lies are small. That is the lake sprite. I ought to know such things. Don't make him even angrier." "It really is a louse," I assured him, and I told Olgas about Pierre and Rock's experiments. The mention of primates didn't make the sage any happier, because just like the others, the primates didn't believe in sprites and never visited the grove. In ancient times there weren't any groves, and these sprites were only invented later. They would explain. In those days long ago, when the woods were still full of primates, people would bow in homage to the other beings that those, but sadly we no longer remember who they were and how they were worshipped. At any rate, Olgas still didn't want to believe that it was an ordinary, if oversized, louse swimming in the water and not the lake sprite. Unfortunately, at that moment, the bug managed to flounder closer to the shore so that its legs reached the bottom, and it clambered onto dry land. It was wet, drooping, and shivering a little, and tried instantly to scuttle down into a pine root. "Now you see that isn't a sprite," I said. "Apparently, it just looks like a sprite. I didn't know that sprites look like big lies." Olgas the sage glowered angrily at the louse. "Boy," he said then, having turned its back decisively on the creature and putting its heavy hand in my shoulder, "I want to tell you that you have dishonored the lake sprite by throwing that horrible animal into the water. The sprite's domain is polluted, and I will have to bring him many sacrifices to quell his rage, and you must help me, since you are most blamed for. Angering the sprite, come back here at midnight tonight and bring with you all the wolves from your barn. This time, squirrel's blood won't be enough. I must do everything in my power to stop the sprite from avenging this indignity. Mother won't let me have the wolves killed. They give us milk. Your mother will have to get used to it, because her son has done evil." There was no trace left of the kindly old granddad, which is burning eyes and whiskers resembling with rage. The sage more resembled a rat standing on in his hind legs. A mother is responsible for her son, and she is guilty too, because if she went to the grove every week as she would, and took you with her, she would know that too. In the olden days, many people went to the grove every day to show respect to the powerful forces of nature and to earn their goodwill and friendship. Then it wouldn't have occurred to any brat that he could throw a filthy louse into a sacred lake. Lemmet, terrible things will happen to you if you don't respect the sprites. Even I can't placate the nature spirits if you anger them with this shameless behavior. You really would be better off listening to me instead of befriending primates and snakes too much. They may be our brothers, of course, but they are quite a different breed. Olga's thought had scared me. Did I really have to bring all our wolves to the lakeshore so that the sage could slit their throats and buy the friendship of the lake sprite with their blood? What would mother say? We needed the wolves. Of course, we could get new animals. There were many abandoned wolves whose masters had moved to the village, trotting around the woods. But that kind of much traveled wolf didn't give much milk. It would take a long time for them to get used to new pack. And anyway, replacing the wolves would be inconvenient, and I had a very bad feeling in my heart. In the end, I wasn't to blame that the louse rushed into the water. I tried to explain that to August, but he said that it didn't matter since the lake sprite was angry anyway, and that awful things would happen if he wasn't given wolf's blood. He commanded me to be at the grove with the wolves at exactly midnight, adding that in the olden days wolves alone would not have sufficed. In olden days, that the guilty party, remaining myself, would have had to be cut into pieces and thrown into a lake. But he, Olgas, was such a skillful sage and such a great friend to the lake sprite that he was able to placate the sprite with wolf flesh alone, or at least he would try. This kind of talk terrified me even more. What if this attempt failed and Olgas decided to sacrifice me to the sprite after all? We sneaked away from the lakeshore, leaving Olgas muttering some spells. I had a very bad feeling, as any child would, who has done something naughty and now has to go home to tell his mother at the same time. I knew that the sooner I got this horrible business off my shoulders, the better. I wanted to pass the decision on to my mother, let her tell me what to do, whether to go at midnight to the lakeshore with the wolves or not. I asked Tins and Partle to take the louse back to Peter and Rod while I ran home. So this was chapter 7 of the Man Who Spoke Snakish by Andros Kivirak. Um, it ended on page number 74. Chapter 8 will start on page 75. Thank you for listening and hope you have a good night. Bye.